Man, half my videos are going to be with me talking in the beginning and I'm muted. I don't understand what's up with that. But welcome. My name is 12 Gauge. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, I hope that you find something that stimulates your mental growth, your analytical brain, and gives you the ability to find some questions within your own mind that can give you an understanding about true crime. In no way am I trying to sway your opinion one way or the other, whether guilt or innocence of the individual named in this case. First and foremost, I don't really expect a chat tonight because it is almost 2 in the morning here where I'm at, and that's fine. I kind of miss those times when I can just get on here and talk and not really have to monitor the chat, even though I do enjoy it. There's times when you just need to talk. And this is one of them. I'm going to revisit a video that I made about the wounds. And in that video, it's going to talk about different variations about different killers throughout time and how they were able to distinguish the wound structure and things of that nature. If you're a continuing visitor to my channel, thank you for continuing to come back. I try very hard to stay in the middle when it comes to this case. I really don't like to be one way or the other, regardless of the status quo that many other channels want to be about. You know, I'm my own person. The only person that I challenge daily is myself. Nobody else challenges me. I'm my own person, and I can watch other people and still have an opinion. And most of the time, that opinion is me asking myself, how do they figure that even makes sense with the information that we've received? So, let me load up my video. Hey, Amber, how you doing? Thank you for being here on this late night. Let me load up my video that I did and start discussing a little bit. So you're going to get a double dose of 12 gauge. This was very early on, and I really didn't understand the concept of true crime, but I was trying my best. I'm doing great. I thought I'd get on here and continue discussing what I was discussing earlier, even though it's a different path. It still deals with the knife wounds and everything of that nature. So I hope you enjoy the show. Let me see. And here we go. Let's listen what old 12 gauge has to say. Yeah,
Good evening.
I'd
like to welcome everybody to my channel. This is 12 Gauge. First of all, I'd like to state that everything that is talked about here, discussed here, is my own opinion.
You fast forward it.
I'd like to discuss the traits of a serial killer.
She had a slower laptop at that point, so please forget the lagging part of it.
Hope the sound in the background doesn't irritate people.
It's already irritating me, 12 gauge.
An expert revealed the 12 key traits common in serial killers, and some of them might surprise you. This is Business Insider. Smooth talking, but insecure. Looky, Mr. Bundy. Ted Bundy was a charmer, the kind of guy that made it easy for people to be swept into his web. I liked him immediately, but people like Ted can fool you completely. Diane Rule, author of the best-selling Stranger Beside Me, but her experiences with Bundy, a man she considered a friend. I'd been a cop, had all the psychology, but his mask was perfect. I say that long acquaintance can help you know someone, but you can never really be sure. Scary. Look at the last part of that where she said, knowing somebody can be scary. Thinking you know somebody and then you find out that they're a serial killer?
Thank you, 12 Gauge, for turning that annoying music off. It was driving me crazy. He's talking about Ted Bundy right now, and or I'm talking about Ted Bundy. I don't want to talk about myself that way. Like you said, Ted Bundy was a character, a charmer. He made it easy for people to be swept into his web. This person said, I liked him immediately, but people like Ted can fool you completely. And Rule, the author, the best stranger beside me. Bundy, a man she considered a friend. I'd been a cop, had all the psychology, but the mask was perfect. I say the long acquaintance can help you know someone, but you can never really know. It's scary. And that's true, whenever you think that you know somebody, um, and yeah, Amber, I will check it out. I have watched some of them, but if you've listened to my videos at all, you kind of see the view that I'm going towards, and I don't really lean toward trying to figure it out or try to put all the pieces in guilt or innocence. I mainly just present the analytical portion, the scientific portion of it all, and let you make up your own mind, because everyone in the chat, believe it or not, they are really smart and they have a lot of talent and they have the ability to see things that sometimes the creator is unable to see or to hear. You guys should give yourself more credit because you're the reason we're here. It's not vice versa. And, you guys have a lot more insight than you realize. So try to always remember that you're the important person, not the person presenting the material. That's the way I look at it. Let's see what I continue to say.
Imagine how that would play in your head when you found this out. Okay. Egocentric and grandiose. Grandiose basically means to go over the top on just about anything and everything. Everything is a dramatic presentation. Egocentric is all about themselves. Jack the Ripper thought the world of himself and felt he would outsmart the police so much that he sent letters taunting the London officers. Dear boss, he wrote, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about leather apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores, and I shan't quit ripping them till I get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with it, but it went thick like glue and I can't use it. Red ink is fit enough, I hope. Ha ha. The next job I do shall clip the lady's ears off and send to the police officers. My knife's so nice and sharp. I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck. Jack the Ripper. Lack of remorse or guilt. Look at that guy. Does that look like a remorseful guy? Sure does not. And since we're talking about serial killers, I know Brian's not a serial killer in the Idaho 4. I know that. Well, look at these traits that these individuals possess that he himself could possess. Had he not been caught, or the perpetrator who did this, if they're still free, do they possess these traits? Joel Rifkin was filled with self-pity when he was convicted of killing and dismembering at least 9 women. He called his conviction a tragedy. But later in prison, he got into an argument with mass murderer Colin Ferguson over whose killing spree was more important. And when Ferguson taunted him for only killing women, Rifkin said, "Yeah, but I had more victims." Lack of empathy. And this is why I wanted to bring this to your attention. Early on, I heard that Mr. Koberger was stated as saying he lacked empathy towards people. Whatever he meant by that in his paper that he wrote when he was young, really don't understand the context of that, but he did write it.
Okay. Amber, you're talking about Elia Roger. I did a stream on him last night if you want to check that out. It's very, very insightful. Joseph, you say you can't really get how someone has no guilt or remorse. That is hard to understand. You're right. I mean, how can somebody do this without any kind of feeling of consciousness? Well, you would have to imagine somebody that is living in a world of psychosis most of the time. Their reality is not our reality. And just like with the area where people say it's just an excuse, it's just a lack of understanding on their part, because when somebody's living in their mind, like I just said, in a life of psychosis, they're living a reality that is based on their understanding, not the world's. So whenever a killer is plotting and planning and this and that and the other, try to remember that it's not your reality that they're seeing. I mean, you can ask yourself, well, this is logical. He did this, he did that. But the truth of the matter is, logic has no reasoning in the mind of a killer. And even though I do talk about Mr. Koberger a lot in this initial video, I was starting out, and at this point, I guess I was leaning toward more that these things did fit him. None of that has changed. I have just reconstructed my wording to mean it's about the message, not the person. It says, I've always said when I get old, I'd rather my mind go versus my body. Yeah, I agree with you. BTK spoke on this. You're right. So let's go ahead and hear some more about it. So lack of empathy means that you have no moral compass when it comes to human beings, when it comes to little kids, when it comes to animals, when it comes to any of that. It means that your empathy, you could watch somebody fall down, hurt themselves viciously, and then ask them, well, what made you do that? You knew you were going to hurt yourself. Instead of focusing on the fact that they're in pain, that they could have broken something, that you should help them. There is no empathy, so you're not going to help them. You're going to focus on their flaws, and it comes across very narcissistic and very, very abnormal. Not pro-social. It comes across as maladaptive and antisocial. So let's listen to what old 12 Gauge has to say.
Andrell Chikatilo, who feasted on bits of genitalia, both male and female, after his kills thought nothing to taking a life, no matter how torturous it was for his victims. The whole thing, the cries, the blood, the agony, gave me relaxation and a certain pleasure, he said. Deceitful and manipulative. Look, 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 look. It's Pogo the Clown. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy refused to take responsibility for the 28 boys buried beneath his house, even though he also once said the clowns can get away with murder. I think after 14 years under truth serum, had I committed the crime, I would have known it, said the man the neighbors all claimed to like. There's got to be something that would click in my mind. I've had photos of 21 of the victims, and I've looked at them over the years, here and there, and I've never recognized any of them. Shallow emotions. German serial killer Rudolf Flehl, convicted of killing 10 people, later took his own life in prison, compared his hobby or murder to playing cards, and later told police, "What I did is not such a great harm. With all these surplus women nowadays, anyway, I had a good time." Look how nonchalant they are. They're just like killing is not really that big of a deal. Look at that guy's face. Laughing it up. Impulsive. Tommy Lynn Sells, who claimed responsibility for dozens of murders throughout the Midwest and South, saw a woman at a convenience store and followed her home. An impulse he was unable to control. He waited until a house went dark. Then I went into this house. I go into the first bedroom. I don't know whose room it is, and I start stabbing. The victim was the woman's young son.
Did you hear that? He waited until the lights went dark. Then he went into the first room he saw, and he started stabbing and stabbing without any kind of remorse. His urge was more than he could handle. That sounds like a trait that happened in this crime. Whether he went into the first room, he or she went into the first room and just started stabbing. You know, in the very beginning, we were told that this was a targeted attack. How did they know that? You have to ask yourself, what are some of the things they were telling you in the very beginning that you really didn't understand, and you took it to mean something one way or the other, so it caused you to form a side. So we were told it was a targeted attack. So this individual, whoever it might be, walked into this home and targeted 4 people. That means he or she went in there with the intent to calm that urge, whatever it was, of impulsiveness. At this point that night, everything added up, and he took care of what was haunting him or her. You know, to watch a house and then wait till the lights go out and know that either they're asleep or at least you're not going to be seen in the dark. You know, in the very beginning also, they spoke of night vision goggles. I don't know how true that is. I don't know if it was a speculation or a rumor, but I remember reading about that. That would make sense. I mean, if you took night vision goggles, you could see, they couldn't see you. You know, it's a very disturbing concept, because nighttime's supposed to be a safe time for people. Whether you're intoxicated, whether you're sober, it's supposed to be safe. And to wake up with your safety net all of a sudden cut, and you're having to fight for your life, I mean, that is a concept I wouldn't wish on anybody. because you're not at your finest first thing after waking up. And I think the killer probably knew that. You're not going to be alert. Even if you just went to sleep, you're not going to immediately wake up out of a sound sleep and be at your best. So you're going to try to figure out what's going on, what's happening. What do I need to do? Because your brain is seeing it. Your brain and your eyeballs are communicating, but your muscles are not awake yet because of the sleep paralysis. So that's another concept that I believe people fail to understand as well. When you're asleep and you wake up, you're not 100%. And there's a lot of individuals that say, well, were they bludgeoned? Was there a stun gun used? Was there this? Was there that? Maybe none of that was used. Maybe the fact that they were coming out of that sleep paralysis made it enough time for him to do what the killer meant to do. And I'm saying killer because I'm not certain that the individual in jail right now is the killer or is not the killer. At this point, he has been arrested, indicted for these murders. It's not up to me to decide whether he did it or not. Exactly, Heather. I agree with you. So sleeping is allowing yourself to be completely vulnerable and allow yourself to relax. So you're not instantly going to just jump out of your sleep and ready to fight. It doesn't happen that way most of the time. Let's listen about this guy.
So, Mr. Koberger supposedly waded into the house one dark. He went into the house. He didn't stop at the first room he saw because that would have been Dylan's. But supposedly, according to reports from family members, the two on the second floor were handled first because he didn't have to go upstairs. And then he went upstairs to the two girls and did what he did. Poor behavior controls. Another thing Mr. Koberger possessed is he had poor behavior controls according to his students and his professors and the people who he was acquaintances with while at WSU. This individual says, I wished I could stop, but I could not. I had no other thrill or happiness, said UK killer Dennis Nilsson, who killed at least 12 young men via strangulation, then bathed and dressed their bodies before disposing of them, often by burning them. So think of an individual not having much of a life, not having much of happiness, needing excitement, and the only way that they can get that filled is to kill or hunt another individual. For Albert Fish, a masochistic killer with a side of sadism that included sending a letter to the mother of one of his victims describing in detail how he cut, cooked, and ate her daughter. Even the idea of his own death was one he found particularly thrilling. Going to the electric chair will be the supreme thrill of my life, he said.
You're right, Heather. You're very right. I mean, like I stated early on, this was an earlier video. This is one of those videos that that I did early on when I didn't really think before I spoke. I was just excited to get the information out there. I was just excited to kind of I was trying to do the analytical thing, but I just wasn't thinking before I spoke. I was sounding more like I was one-sided, which, at that point I probably was. And you're right, Joseph, we really don't know the facts, like whether wounds were different that came from Steve, for example. Even the coroner did not know. You're right. So if you're thinking about the wounds, aren't they going to be different though the later on you get into the killings? Because you're not going to be as your stamina is going to be, at a particular point. Your adrenaline dump has happened. So you're not going to be as vicious as you were when you started because the mental clock was going off in your head for whatever reason. Then you were focused. Toward the end, I'm sure this individual, whoever it was probably gaining the access of not believing that they just killed 4 people. The other 2 people that they left alive, I'm sure it wasn't even a thought. It wasn't even a thought. You know? Um I'm glad you are enjoying this, guys. I really am. I mean, I I woke up and I couldn't sleep any longer because I went to bed earlier, so I decided to get back and do what I like to do, is present things. Let's continue to listen.
Lack of responsibility. This is Mr. Gacy again. I see myself more as a victim rather than a perpetrator, said John Gacy. In a rare moment of admitting the murders, I was cheated out of my childhood. I should never have been convicted of anything more serious than running a cemetery without a license. They were just a bunch of worthless little queers and punks. Early behavior problems. When I was a boy, I never had a friend in the world, said German serial killer Heinrich Pommerenke, who began raping and murdering girls as a teen. Adult antisocial behavior. Look at Mr. Greenway. Gary, did I say Greenway? I meant Ridgway. Gary Ridgway pleaded guilty to killing 48 women, mostly prostitutes, who were easy prey and were rarely reported missing, at least not immediately. I don't believe in man, God, nor devil. I hate the whole damn human race, including myself. I preyed upon the weak, the harmless, and the unsuspecting. This lesson was taught by others. Might makes right. But think about what he just said. He didn't care. He didn't believe in man, God, nor the devil. So he became one. Let's look at this next article on Fox. It says Idaho murder investigators can identify the knife without it being found, forensic expert state. Mr. Morgan, the forensic expert, he said the knife used in the Idaho student murders may have left behind evidence that investigators could use to tie it back to the killer, even if the blade is never found. We know what happened. The 4 Idaho students were killed in the middle of the night by supposedly graduate student Brian Koberger. An empty tan leather sheath was found next to the bodies of 2 of the slain students, and police say the murder weapon is a fixed blade knife. While the knife itself is still missing, forensic expert Morgan described on Dr. Phil Thursday how the weapon could still be identified and linked to the killer. It's not necessarily that we had a knife at this point, because the knife actually would leave behind more evidence. Morgan explained. There's the K-bar. Fixed blade knife, meaning that the blade stays in one position. He said the full body x-ray done during the autopsy may reveal a metal chip from the knife that can be then analyzed. So during the autopsies, they took x-rays and they could see exactly what kind of knife it was if it left any metal chips.
Did you hear that little portion right there? And that's never really been discussed in any creator that I've listened to. They've never discussed the fact that you can x-ray and you can take and you can see the metal fragments that's left behind, that you can actually tell what type of knife was used based on that scientific data. And I have moved to another state all by myself, Heather, and it's quite intimidating. You don't really know anybody, but it's kind of like moving to another town. You know, you want a fresh start. Nobody knows you, and you're able to be who you are. I don't understand in this case how he didn't reinvent himself to be a different person, but just continued down the same path he was going as far as his antisocial antics. Doesn't make him a killer, but exactly makes him an antisocial individual. So let's talk about that X-ray stuff that I just talked about. Okay, um, they're able to do X-rays to determine whether there's any kind of metal fragments and to be able to identify what type of knife was used. This is a good statement right here. I think Brian purposely made mistakes. He knew this would cause confusion about evidence, and so doubt would prevail. The data re-knife is fascinating. Good comment, Joseph. He opened his phone like 23rd of June 22. It's 20 weeks between that and the crime. Yeah, that's interesting information there. But what do y'all think about the X-ray? The ability for an X-ray, or even to be able to identify a knife through X-ray of the fragment that were left behind? Because just because you can't see it doesn't mean that whatever it struck on the internal parts of the body, it didn't leave shards of metal that could be seen under an X-ray. It's it's interesting that we hear of the individual that's accused of this crime, and there are a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions. You know, how could he have done this? How could he have done that? What was he thinking during this, during that? What I'm curious to know, and I hope this comes out because I'm very curious, is what were the last 48 hours of his life like before the crime was committed? What was his pattern of living? You know, was he one of those rigid individuals that, you know, like Mr. Rogers, he would get home. What the first thing he would do? He would slip out of his work sweater or work coat and work shoes and put on some comfortable shoes and his comfortable sweater, and, you know, put his shoes up, put his coat up, and then begin talking to the camera. You know, and there are a lot of people that are creatures of habit. We all are as human beings. We're creatures of habit. So to think that an individual's pattern cannot be identified, it's easier than we believe. I mean, how many of you take the same ride to work that you take home? And what happened to you if the ride that you normally take, if there's construction or there's a detour? What's the first thing you do? You get angry, right? Because you say, okay, now that's going to cut down on such and such amount of time that I have to take and get to work. Or if there's a traffic jam, or you have a flat tire, or your battery goes out, or whatever it might be, you know. Um, so it has a lot to do with human behavior. We are very disciplined, ritualistic individuals, most of us, and they make it sound like this crime was created by someone who would just Not any of that. They call it sloppy. They call it opportunistic. Someone that just rode around looking for the right moment to commit this crime and then left the knife sheath, hauled ass out of the neighborhood, and there we go. Okay. Exactly. And that's what I'm saying right now as far as the x-rays. You're going to be able to see, as morbid as it sounds, you're going to be able to see exactly what kind of fragments were left behind. I know you would believe that that would be enough for somebody to say, well, maybe tonight's not the night. Maybe tonight's not a good night. X-ray emit particular molecular patterns from every element that allow determination of material within the knife. Not every knife gives off these patterns, so a knife maker can be determined. Very good. Very good insight. Thank you for being here, Joseph. You're very knowledgeable. I think I've seen you in chat before, as well as Heather and Nina and, the rest of you that I've named. Thank you for being up this late with me, presenting this, and talking about it.
So this knife allegedly has been used repeatedly 4 times. Just think about that. The structural integrity of this thing begins to wear down. It'll chip. Sometimes points break off. I've seen this any number of times at an autopsy. If that is the case, they may very well have recovered a metal fragment from the blade of that knife within the body. He then explained how metallurgical analysis can be used to trace the knife back to a specific manufacturer, which could help investigators figure out where the knife was sold and who purchased it. Just because the sheath was found there doesn't mean that that's the knife that was carried. So you look for a specific forensic tieback relative to the chemical structure of the blade as well. That might be a potential here in this case. So just because that knife sheath was there doesn't mean that that's the knife that was in that sheath. But
that's a good point, 12 gauge, because we have never been told that a K-bar knife was used. We've never been told that. Heather says she sleeps once a year. Awesome, Joseph. Awesome. So how many of you believe that it could have been a different knife used? Because we've heard different variations of stories from different people. The knife wound didn't match. There were different knife wounds with different people. So think about that a minute. How many of y'all believe, based on your own research, not what somebody has told you, that there could have been a different knife used? Maybe the knife sheath wasn't even a K-bar knife. Maybe it was something else. I don't know why somebody would bring a K-bar knife sheath and plant it, but, put it down. But, this whole case doesn't make sense sometimes, So what do y'all think? I've always said that. We don't even know if that was the weapon. That's true. We've never been told that. We've never been told this is the weapon that was used. They've always said a sharp, fixated, serrated knife. So, if it's not the weapon K-bar that's paired to the sheath sold as a pair, does the DNA matter? I would say that if it's not the knife, it wouldn't. I mean, that's a great point. Just because your DNA is on a sheath, but that's not the knife that was used, how are they going to put you there? Explain that a little bit, Nina. You said, I think the K-bar was under Maddie's pillow. So you believe the K-bar was her knife? If one planned ahead, how can rage be induced upon action? In other words, can rage be summoned upon beginning of a fact? I spoke on that earlier, cause and effect. If I get this correctly on what you're trying to say, it's how can one precurse the other? Like they say it was a crime of passion, a rageful crime. What would make one so angry? What would make one so angry? And I was speaking earlier as well because I did a live earlier, but it was a different one. It was on profiling a killer. Um, so many speculate that it was jealousy. Somehow or another, he was fixated on one of the girls. They turned him down. I've known a lot of men that have been rejected, and even some with some severe mental anger problems, and not one. And I mean, I'm just saying, not one has gone and killed them in the middle of the night. What do y'all think about that? I mean, it takes a lot of rage to get to that point. Did he go out with one of them and then they start, not Koberger, I'm saying whoever did this, because we're not certain he did this, okay? Innocent till proven guilty. So think about this. Did whoever did this engage with one of the people? Could he have been tutoring? Could he have been even befriended one of them at the Mad Greek? Or maybe both of them. And then they turned on him. Maybe instead of being nice, they started making fun of him. They started doing the same thing that other people did throughout his lifetime. And this escalated. And he wanted revenge, whoever it was. Could there have been a rejection factor? Could there have been an infatuation that the others didn't know about? Ethan, I believe, was just there at the wrong place at the wrong time. I don't believe that he was a target other than the fact that he was a male and he was there and he had to be taken out. Let's continue to hear what good old 12 gauge has to say.
We're going to be able to tie back relative of the chemical structure of the blade as well. So if any of those chips in that blade were found, they're going to be able to tell it. Well, let's talk about knife targets. Okay? The mere physicality of an edged weapon encounter is dramatically different than that of a firefight. You will be up close, probably face to face with the bad guy. You will smell their breath, feel their sweat, see their face, and hear the groan when you hear the knife is twisted out of the body. Look at how close that guy is. Using one arm to subdue him.
Understand that for whatever reason, I blinked out. I think I didn't know how to do the sharing screen, so I think I was looking at it, thinking that once you start sharing, you just switch the tabs and it's going to share the tab you're looking at. So I was looking at the tab, but it was stuck on this sharing screen. So if you're wondering what's going on, that was probably what it was. So just bear with 12 gauge here. He was kind of naive in the process. This is a very early on video, but it has a lot of great information. It didn't get a lot of views, as you can tell. I'm about to like it myself, so it only got 4 likes. So if you could kind of give me some likes on this, if you enjoy what I'm presenting, please do so.
The mere physicality of an edge weapon encounter is dramatically different than that of a firefight. You will be up close, probably face to face. Like I just said, you'll smell his breath, you'll feel his sweat, see his face, and hear the groan when the knife is twisted out of the body. Putting a blade into someone's throat, twisting it, and then tugging it out is not a pretty sight. Sorry for the graphic there. Slashing attacks, while devastating in appearance, are usually superficial in nature and are not usually life-threatening. Stabbing attacks, on the other hand, do not look good on the surface, but the internal bleeding and damage can be extensive. Keep in mind that heavy clothing may provide protection from both slashing and thrusting attacks. So, were the individuals that night wearing clothes that protected them from slashing and thrusting attacks? You have to ask yourself, were they wearing pajamas? Were they still in their party clothes? I mean, if you looked at the clothes that they were wearing while they were out at the grub truck, Kaylee and Maddie had on a little pink shirt and some jeans and some boots and a coat. Kaylee had on a sweatshirt and some jeans and some white shoes. So I don't believe that any of that clothing would have been sufficient enough to stop a stabbing.
Man, 12
When
gauge,
using a thrusting attack, the blade should be twisted when withdrawing it for 2 reasons:
you're
to
spitting
break the
fast,
naturally
bro.
occurring suction and make a larger wound channel. See, there's stuff like this that anybody can research and anybody can read and anybody can get the knowledge of what happens once you do these things. I'm not going to read the rest because it's pretty graphic, but you can read it if you want. Remember, the bad guy may not know he had been stabbed or cut. Most individuals who are attacked with an edged weapon say they thought they were being punched and had no idea that they were stabbed. That's terrible. That's terrible. Keep in mind that the body is a hydraulic system with 12 pints of blood, and it may take 15 to 30% blood loss, 2 or 4 pints, to affect change in the vital signs. Most of the areas will be familiar from your first aid and CPR classes, in which you learn the pressure points to stop bleeding. I don't want to go into this next part because I already did it in another video. So if you want to learn,
Boy, that man is spitting some facts, huh? Who is this masked guy? Anyways, you are talking about where he met. Could he have ran into one of the victims? If we're talking Coburger, didn't Kaylee frequent a bar over there in Pullman called the Coug or something like that? Or did she just go one time? I mean, as we've noticed about the suspect, is he enjoyed going to places like that based on what we've been told. Um, I remember hearing that he used to go to a bar in Pullman, not really remembering which one, but I remember he used to frequent a bar in Pullman. And also he did that in Pennsylvania. I mean, it just a thing to do, you're going out for the night. But think about Ted Bundy when he used to go out to the bar he went to, I think it was called Dante's. He would he would have his own personal chair in which he would sit there and survey the bar and pick out the brunette he was gonna take home and do whatever. Um, so very methodical, very. It's kind of like, I mean, he also said in a quote, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. You have all the people that you potentially want to pick from. They're all right here. I'm going to be right here. They're all right here. I'm going to be fixated on one and I'm going to take them out. But the same thing happened. Let's flip the other side, okay? Let's say he was at a bar in Pullman. Let's say he did run across Kaylee or Maddie or Xana. If you're gonna hurt somebody, why wait? All these other serial killers didn't wait. They gave into that urge. They did it that night. They did it within hours of meeting the person. They didn't wait months and then all of a sudden say, "Oh, tonight the night I'm going to go take everybody out in that house." That doesn't make sense based on the MO of most murderers. It doesn't make sense whatsoever. What do y'all think about that? This individual, whoever did this crime, had ample opportunity at many points in these four students' lives, at least three of them, in these three students' lives to take them out if that's who they were stalking or preying upon. They had ample time to do it. Understand that. Understand that. We're not talking about him. We're talking about anybody in general. Okay? If it wasn't him, whoever it was had ample opportunity to take these people out. They didn't have to wait until November 13th, 2022. They could have taken them out on their walk to the grub truck. If that was a weekly thing for these two girls, like one guy was with them for a reason. Protection, right? Why was he around? They acted like they didn't want him around. Like he was a burden, What this dude walking with us for? Why is he around? Well, we're going to keep him around in case anything happens. So think about that a little bit. If you're going to take somebody out, why are you going to wait? Why are you going to wait? This could have been anybody on either campus. Anybody. Somebody mentioned, how come he didn't do this to somebody at WSU? I think it makes a lot of sense, but it's really close to proximity. I believe that if this individual is the one, the anonymity of it all was what he was hoping for. So let's continue to hear what this individual
about where to stab and the things that will happen if you stab in this area, if you stab in that area. You can go to my channel and you can see my last video. So that was pretty informative, I thought. I thought it was very informative where it spoke on, how they'll be able to potentially, if not already, have done an autopsy where they could find fragments of a knife and the pieces that could have been left behind. I've never even heard of that, and I thought that was very informative. There's been a lot of speculation this week about the trial coming up and the preparation that it's going to take for the trial to be completed and things of that nature. But do you really feel that in your heart, after this long, amidst all the conspiracy, amidst all the coulda, woulda, shouldas, if you're just looking at the evidence that was given to you, do you feel that you understand who the potential perpetrator is or isn't? Because, when we get into that, there's no way you could have done this, there's no way you could have done that. Once again, if you look at my last video where I was discussing how quickly somebody can be incapacitated, it said between 5 and 15 seconds. And they won't even be able to fight back. Cut them right here, cut them right here, cut them right here. It enables them incapable to fight back. Today I heard the possibility of the two roommates being involved once again, the surviving roommates. Could either one of them been strong enough to overcome a 6'4" guy, a fiery brunette, a tenacious blonde, and a very outspoken, fiery friend of hers? If so, then that might be your theory. But if you're looking at logic, you have to ask yourself, how could that happen? How trained killers are taught over months and years how to incapacitate somebody. And still, at the moment of truth, you have to clear your mind where it's just you, the opportunity, and your reward. Because if it isn't that way, and it's emotional, like most people, when they talk about this, their emotions are involved. And I understand that. I understand why they're involved. I understand why they have such a emotional connection to this. But you have to ask yourself this. If you take all the emotions away and you take out that you didn't know who Brian Kohberger was, is, and they just gave you the information, they didn't give you a name, would you still believe it was him? Take out the white Elantra BS. The first situation about, 2013, then went to 2015, 16, take out all that, all the confusion, the pieces that you don't know about, which is the gag order. Use your intellectual mind rather than your emotional attachment. And then ask yourself, is it viable that this happens? Is it viable that an individual set up revenge to be able to go take down these 4 people? Or did he only intend on one and got overzealous and went and did as many as he could? Was it revenge? Was it greed? Was it money? Because most people say it was a crime of passion. A crime of passion where somebody's feelings were hurt. Supposedly, the guy that did it is 28 years old and a graduate student, and looks like his emotional attachment to life is very limited, if at all. He had that look like he didn't attach to anything very much, especially being rejected by a female. He looked like he would just shrug it off and be like, you know what? No big deal. So look at that avenue. Does he look like somebody that would be jealous of two females that were living the party life that he wished that he could have lived? Does he really look like an individual that cared about the party life? To me, he doesn't. He looks like a very stoic, very proper.
Let's talk about that a minute. That is one of the theories that is brought upon this individual who was jealous because during his youth he missed out on that. He wasn't um, he wasn't partying. He was not able to get the girls. This and that and the other. Well, how do we know? I mean, how do we know he missed out on all that? How do we know that was such a a moment in time that would cause him or whoever to create such a crime? Like I said, this video is very early on, so I was not really thinking what was coming out of my mouth before it came out. As I'm watching it now and God, why did I say that? I was really nervous presenting this because I wasn't really sure how it'd be perceived, you know. But you have to understand the psyche, and most of you do, when it comes to people placing the little piece of the puzzle that says this is the motive. But what was the intent? You can't have one without the other. What was the intent and what was the motive? Based on what we know now, we still don't know either answer to those questions, because motive and intent is the catalyst that propels everything else. And we've never been told either. We've never been told about the knife. We've never been told about any of the real facts that would lead an individual to commit this crime that would make sense in our minds. I mean, to a lot of people, some of the things that we've been told does make sense to them. But if you stop and analyze your thoughts, and then analyze those thoughts, and analyze those thoughts, you're going to see, as individuals have stated, there's lack of evidence. Well, lack of evidence means that you don't understand the evidence or you don't know the missing pieces because of the stupid gag order. I appreciate that, Joseph. I appreciate that. What I'm saying is this, is when it comes to being analytical and you're looking outside the box, like I said earlier, there has to be more to your intellect and your perception of the problem to get to the final solution. There's a lot of things that you must go through, And hopefully one day we'll find out all those answers. Let's finish this video up.
able to disguise themselves for the moment. But people have more than one side to them. And I'm sure we really don't know who Mr. Koberger is. Just like we really don't know who the murdered 4 students were. Of course, we want to think all of them were angels and they didn't do anything wrong and they were sweet and everything like that. I hope people talk about me when I'm gone like that. But the real people will remember all the hurt and pain that I caused them. And I, in no way, am saying that they were hurtful and harmful people, okay? I'm not saying that at all. So don't get on your high horse and think, well, 12 gauge is saying that those people were just, hurtful and they hurt people and they deserve what they got. No, that's not what I'm saying. But you really don't know these people. I don't know them. So we can only assume by the pictures, by the friends talking, by this,
I
that,
saw
and the
that
other,
bullets.
who they were. So in reality, we don't know the victim. We don't know the perpetrator. We don't know the house. Because in reality, nobody was there filming this reality show. We all want a piece of it. Heck, I'm spending 30 minutes tonight doing it because it's intriguing. It keeps your mind going. It's like a puzzle that nobody can solve and won't be able to. Even if they solve it, they still won't be believed that they solved it until the jury addresses whether this is the man and if he's guilty of the 4. So don't stress yourself out over this because the emotional attachment, if you have that, you need to look at what reenactment in your life is being triggered by this attachment to this case. Did you have somebody in your family murdered and then never caught them, left you with unanswered questions? Did you have domestic issues? Did you have drug issues? Did you have crime issues? Were you a criminal? Were you this, that, and the other? So therefore you can understand it or you can state that you feel this and that and the other. Because in the end, we all do not know. I was wild at that age too. That doesn't mean I could understand what a 19, 20, 21-year-old does today because the time isn't the same. A lot of people say, well, did you even go to college? To some of these people, and of course they did, but it wasn't the same. The drugs weren't the same, the parties weren't the same, the hazing, all that was not the same. So to sit there and say that you understand it because you once went to college and you may have been a frat and this and that and the other, unless it was last year, you really don't get it. Because things change really quickly. So I want to leave you with this, okay? Because I got to make some phone calls. It's funny how people don't mess with you until you're doing something like this. I want to leave you with this. Try to imagine, instead of looking at this as a crime that needs to be solved, look at it as a situation where it really makes logical sense with logical thought. Because in reality, all these Linda Lane footage, all the Taylor Avenue footage, all the Banfield footage, I ask you to stop making that like somebody was filming a movie at each of these locations, and the only thing that was being shown was evidence of a crime committed. Because a lot of that was just Saturday night in a college town. A lot of that was just kids, being loud, rowdy, dressing up, scaring people, whatever it was. But since we don't know the answer, we're going to put these players in a situation where they were in the limelight at the wrong time, at the wrong time, at the wrong time, at the wrong time. The grub truck. I've seen so many videos where they've dissected every person at the grub truck. They've talked about this person. They've talked about that person. They've dug into their family. They've dug into their family. You know what? I would have hated to be at that grub truck that night because God knows what people would have dug up on me, my family, and it's out there forever. But in the name of justice, people do this every day, not realizing the implication that they're putting people's lives in. And you know, the First Amendment is free speech. That's the beauty of what we do on these platforms, have free speech. But after a while, free speech is no longer free. When we start harming people with our words, putting them in a light that they can't escape from, even if it's true, we have no right to put people in places where we really don't know they belong. And we're not investigators. I'm not. I'm not a cop. I'm not a judge. I'm not a jury. I'm not any of that. But I am smart enough to put my mind to work on certain things that.
All right, shut up, 12 gauge. I've had enough of you. Anyways, as you can tell, due to my therapy background, that toward the end of my presentations, I kind of put it all together and put a little perspective on it. You know, I like to tie everything together and kind of let the individuals make up their own minds. And that's what I try to do. You know, this case is baffling. It really is. It's really baffling. And at that point, when I was putting that video out, I thought, you know, I'm going to do a presentation on the knife wounds because at that point I hadn't heard any creator talk about x-rays and the knife wounds and this and that and the other, and I don't know if I've heard it since. But you know, when it comes down to evidence is evidence, and it's going to be proven scientifically more often than not. At this point in our lives, science plays a big role in solving crimes. It plays a big role in identification of the criminal. It plays a big role in a lot of our lives. So to say that um, our perceptions are based on our emotional attachment, that's not scientific. I asked somebody earlier, you know, if you believe he's innocent, what evidence do you have to support that claim? And I'll stick behind that. I don't know why I keep getting muted. Maybe I'm wanting to be quieted or something. But I'd like to know because nobody has told me their belief behind that, their evidence that they have to support that. Because there's evidence to convict, there's evidence to support innocence. Show me the evidence to support innocence. I'm open minded enough to see it. I won't debate you, but I'd like to see it. You know, and hopefully your evidence would point to a different direction. You know, it would show that this individual was not guilty, but this evidence that you have point to another direction. That the police got tunnel vision. They made mistakes. They rushed through this. Whatever it is, just show me what your thoughts and your evidence is. Oh, excuse me. That point to a different direction. I myself am open-minded to listen to a lot of different things. Yeah, I understand that. I mean, we've been invested in this for so long that it's hard to look elsewhere. But like somebody asked me earlier, they were checking up on me, and I appreciate that. You know, you know, I told them, I said, I have no stake in the YouTube world. YouTube is not my reality. I get on here, I present something, and I leave. After I present it, it's over. It's gone until the next one. And that's how I do my life as far as therapy. I present the classes, I present the individuals, I present all that stuff, and then I leave. There's no emotional attachment. Because when you attach your emotion to something, then you get let down. You get angry, you get frustrated because it doesn't go the direction that you want it to go. You can't convince people to see what you see. One thing that I hope that you understand through a psychological realm is you can't change people. You can't. Whatever their beliefs are is what it's going to be. Whatever their perception is what it's going to be. It doesn't change until people decide to change. And usually it takes a long time for somebody to change. I hope that after this case is done, that this doesn't happen again. But I'm naive to think that it won't. I'm shocked that there hasn't been copycats. I really am. This is such a high profile case, I'm shocked that there hasn't been copycats. And that amazes me this long because you would think somebody would want to steal the spotlight from this individual. Thank you so much for being here at this time of night. Joseph, Heather, Alex, Bullets and Bling, Paula, Amber, True Crime Cult, Nina, and anybody else who I forgot. Thank you so much for being here in this chat and being respectful. Like I always say, we don't always have to get along or agree with each other, but we can be adults and be respectful. Missy Moo, we can be respectful because at the end we all want to see exactly what the result's going to be. Y'all have a good morning, a good night, whatever it is, wherever you're at. I'll be doing the Sundays live around noon. It won't be true crime related, so if you're just looking for the true crime stuff, it's not going to be true crime. It's just going to be my weekly, I guess I can call it my weekly therapy group. I don't know what it is, but People enjoy it, so if you want to stop by and check it out, please do so. Please hit the like button, and if you enjoy what I do, you might tell people about the channel. Let them know that it's pretty level headed in here, and there's not a lot of fighting. There's not a lot of drama. Once again, thank you very much, Maestro. Cue the music.
I'm walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for regrets. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe, trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Yeah. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Feel like a dynamite, ready to explode right up in the sky. I need you to listen, I need you to hear, and don't show any fear. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe, trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly up.
Good evening, everybody. This is 12 Gauge. I'd like to welcome everybody to my channel. If you haven't been here before, welcome. I hope you enjoy and find something that interests you, something that is able to be objective and not push a narrative or an agenda. Hit a like, comment, subscribe. You know, I've had some subscribers, they've commented, I've enjoyed reading the comments, and it's always nice to get kind words, or if you watch one of my videos and I make a mistake or the information's not correct, it's okay. I can take constructive criticism. Just don't be rude. All right. So I know there's not a lot going on in the Idaho 4 case that I really want to discuss right now as far as trials and things of that nature. I mean, there's documents and everything coming out, but I'm not one of those document people that break stuff down and discuss things. I'm more analytical, where I try to piece things together. And if you notice, the title of my video is called "Coburger Is He Like the Gainesville Ripper?" Well, I did a video a while back on the Gainesville Ripper, and it caught my interest because I could see the similarities between the two. So tonight, I'd like to kind of go through the Gainesville Ripper history. His name is Danny Rowland. That was his name, and I'd like to go through the history, even though it's probably been talked about a multitude of times. If you hear a dog barking in the background, please don't stress. It just, my buddy. Okay, the true story of Danny Rowland, the Gainesville Ripper, who inspired the hit movie Scream. Over the course of 4 days, serial killer Danny Rowland terrorized the college students of Gainesville, Florida, in a murderous rampage. Danny Rowland lived an unhappy life. A tortured soul since birth, Rowland, aka the Gainesville Ripper, passed on the horrifying abuse he'd endured onto his victims. There's Mr. Rowling. Over the course of 4 days in 1990, Rowling went on a rampage where he murdered 5 University of Florida students in a spree that terrified the nation. But despite huge media coverage, Danny Rowland was never actually caught for the murders. It was only when he was arrested for an unrelated burglary charge that he confessed to some of the most horrific murders in Florida's history and was unmasked as the Gainesville Ripper. Then, a few short years later, the Gainesville murders became even more infamous when they helped inspire the classic horror movie Scream. I've seen that movie, but I don't remember the premises of it. I mean, I remember it being kind of cheesy. This is the grisly true story of Danny Rowland, the Gainesville Ripper. Danny Rowland's upbringing before becoming the Gainesville Ripper. Danny Harold Rowling was born on May 26, 1954, to Claudia and James Rowling in Shreveport, Louisiana. Unfortunately for Danny, his father never wanted children. He was a cop and he constantly abused his wife and children. Danny was only 1 year old when his father abused him for the first time. He was beaten because he wasn't crawling properly. When Kevin, Danny's younger brother, was born in 1955, the abuse only worsened. Claudia tried to escape the toxic marriage, but time and again she returned. When Danny failed the third grade for too many absences due to illness, his mother had a nervous breakdown. Danny's school counselor described him as suffering from an inferiority complex with aggressive tendencies and poor impulse control. If you don't understand this right here, aggressive tendencies and poor impulse control, that is what they call a criminogenic trait, meaning that most criminals, they possess that. Those aggressive tendencies and poor impulse control would foreshadow Danny's murderous rage later on in his life. By age 11, Danny Rowland picked up music to cope with his abusive father. He played guitar and sang hymn-like songs. About this time, his mother was committed to a hospital after she had slit her wrist. Danny then picked up drugs and alcohol, which only worsened his already fragile mental state. So let's look at Koberger compared to Danny in the early ages based on the material that we have about his upbringing. And I will show some examples here in a little bit about the similarities of their upbringing. It was stated in an article that Koberger had lack of empathy towards anybody. He couldn't feel empathy. He obviously was doing heroin. We don't know if he was drinking. We don't know if he was doing other drugs. But think about this. Danny Rowland picked up drugs and alcohol, and this only worsened his already fragile mental state. How could Koberger's mental state be if he was able to clean himself up and then dive right on into the criminology part of his life? Because one thing about criminals is they're chameleons to the core. They can be just like everybody else if they emulate their behaviors on what they see. Like if they want to be normal, they're gonna pick out somebody that's normal, and they're gonna perfect their mannerisms, their words, things of that nature. But it doesn't mean that their mental state's gonna be secure. And that's where the drugs and the alcohol and the fantasies of getting revenge and these type of things, that's where they grow. At age 14, Danny's neighbors caught him peeping into their daughter's room. Of course, his father beat him for doing that, but Danny tried to stay in control and he attended church and he struggled to hold down steady work. He then enlisted. So at 14, he was already peeping, which is another criminogenic behavior. Voyeurism at 14. The Navy wouldn't take him, so he joined the Air Force, but the military provided him no comfort. He eventually quit the Air Force after too much drug use, which included taking acid more than 100 times. Following his discharge from the military, Danny managed to marry and begin what appeared to be a normal life. If we remember some of the earlier things that were stated about Koberger is he wanted to be a policeman. So he was doing the physical agility, all those things that was going to eventually catapult him into being a police officer. But do you think he was using drugs at that point? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not, because he was physically fit and he was losing weight, he was boxing, he was running, he was doing all these things. Then the cycle of abuse continued. At age 23, after being with his wife for 4 years, she separated from him after he threatened to kill her. This was in 1977. Danny turned his devastation into anger and raped a woman who closely resembled his ex-wife. Later that year, he killed a woman in a car accident, which troubled him further. So he turned his devastation into anger and raped a woman who closely resembled his ex-wife. The rise of the Gainesville Ripper. Danny Rowland's Florida victims: Tracy Inez Pauls, Sonia Larson, Manuel Taboda, Krista Hoyt, and Christina Powell. And you notice they all have that brunette look. They have the brown eyes. I believe the guy with just collateral damage, but still, nonetheless, he was killed. So look at this: 2 women, a guy, and another woman. Same outcome as what the Idaho 4 was. He managed to kill 5, where supposedly Koberger did 4. At 6'2", Danny Rowland was a massive, powerful man. From the late 1970s to 1990s, Rowland committed a series of petty crimes and thefts. He turned to a series of armed robberies to get cash and subsequently was in and out of the criminal justice system in Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, and Alabama. A lot of people say that Koberger is about 6'1" to 6'3". And he was an avid runner, took up boxing, so I'm sure he was no weakling either, you know. Um, he did steal his sister's iPhone, which he was later arrested for. He pawned it for drugs. So, it's not identical. I'm not trying to say these two guys are identical. I'm just pointing out the similarities, okay? He broke out of prison several times and was fired and quit jobs just as frequently. Meanwhile, the bodies of three victims were found in Shreveport: 24-year-old Julie Grissom, her father Tom Grissom, and her nephew, 8-year-old Sean, who were all killed around this time Danny lost his last job and returned home in vengeance. So it sounds like Danny gets some kind of shunning type behavior, some kind of failure-esque mentality, and he takes it out on other people by killing them. Danny Rowland broke in May of 1990. He shot his 50-year-old father twice and nearly killed him. Though he survived, James Rowling had lost an eye and an ear. So he broke in the May of 1990, almost killed his father. Danny then changed his identity with papers he stole after breaking into someone's house. He fled Shreveport and took a bus to Sarasota, Florida, to start a new life as Michael Kennedy Jr. in late July of 1990. But running away to Florida didn't cure Danny and made him worse. Of course, wherever you go, there you are, and you bring all your baggage with you. On August 24, 1990, Danny broke into the home of Sonia Larson and Christina Powell, both incoming freshmen at the University of Florida in Gainesville. Rowley followed them home, broke into their house, and simply overpowered them. Thus began the streak of the Gainesville Ripper. He doesn't look like a powerful man. Right there, he looks like a beaten down man, like he had the world on his shoulders. Rowling covered both of the young women's mouths with duct tape before he bound their hands. He forced one young woman to perform oral sex on him before he raped, stabbed, and killed her. He returned to Sonia's dead body and raped her again. Rowling went as far as to cut off the girl's nipples and to keep one as a grisly trophy of his actions. The next day, Rowling killed Krista Hoyt in much the same fashion. He broke into her residence, and after he raped her, he removed her nipples and placed them beside her. Rowling cut off her head and sat her upright on the edge of her bed. The Gainesville Ripper put her head on a bookshelf. So, I know this is disturbing, and it's very graphic, but this is what real crime is all about. It's not about the imaginary, you know, picturesque scene that we think in our head. It's very bloody and very gory. One thing about Danny Rowland that I'm sure is going to talk about, he positioned the women he murdered, he would pose them. And recently, probably about a month ago, if that, it was stated that Kaylee was against the wall and slumped over. That is how she died. Where before we were told she had fallen and landed on Maddie. So was she positioned? Did the perpetrator position her body to pose her? Was Ethan and Xana posed? Were they taken from whatever whatever position they landed and posed in a way where it would be even more horrific when you found them. I'm sure we'll know at the trial. By now, news of the murders had spread across the university. Authorities put out as much information as they could to try to catch the suspect, and the students slept in groups and took every precaution they could think of. Despite this, the Gainesville Ripper killed one more time. On August 27, Rowling attacked Tracy Pools and Manuel Taboda, both 23. He killed Taboda while he slept. Then he killed Tracy. Authorities feel Rowling did not manage to mutilate these bodies because he may have been in danger of getting caught or was otherwise interrupted. These murders all occurred less than 2 miles from each other around the University of Florida. The university consequently canceled classes for a week. Students brought baseball bats with them everywhere they went, and no one went out alone. During the day or the night, students triple locked their doors and some slept in shifts so someone was awake at all times. By the end of August, thousands of students left campus and around 700 never came back because they feared for their lives. I don't blame them. Danny Rowland's father, who was a 20-year-old veteran cop of Shreveport Police Department, had not only taught his son how to take abuse all of his life, but he also taught Danny how to cover his tracks. Police couldn't find enough evidence at crime scene to implicate Danny Rowland. Instead of leaving the duct tape on the dead body, Danny disposed of it downstairs to get rid of any fingerprints. Danny also used cleaning solvents on the dead body to remove traces of semen. Some of the female bodies were left in sexually suggestive positions, which offered authorities a clue into the killer's method. And there's the names. The Gainesville Ripper continued to steal from homes and gas stations until he was finally caught in Ocala after a high-speed chase. He was wanted for the robbery of a Winn-Dixie, as authorities still did not know that he was the Gainesville Ripper. That was on September 8th, 2 weeks after the murders. The triple murder in Shreveport of Julie Grissom, her father and nephew, clued the Gainesville police into their suspect. Grissom's corpse was left in a sexual position. She was also stabbed to death. It wasn't until January 1991, more than 4 months after the murders, that police caught a break. Because of the similarities of the murders in Shreveport and Gainesville, Florida investigators saw DNA of prisoners from Shreveport who were incarcerated. Danny Rowland's DNA was similar enough to the DNA left at the Gainesville murder scene to charge him with murder. Rowland confessed to being the Gainesville Ripper. Prosecutors found enough evidence to convict him, and he was subsequently executed on October 25th, 2006 in Florida. A total of 47 people witnessed the execution of the Gainesville Ripper, which is double the capacity of the viewing room. Rowland's last meal consisted of a lobster tail served with drawn butter, butterfly shrimp, with cocktail sauce, a baked potato with sour cream and butter, strawberry cheesecake, and sweet tea. On Rowland's deathbed, the 52-year-old sang a hymn-type song that rambled on for 5 verses. He caught on the tunes of his childhood when he learned how to play guitar to find peace before his execution. But that's not quite the end of the story. So let's go ahead and see how it coincides with Mr. Koberger when he was a younger guy. Okay, there's Mr. Koberger right there upon his arrest. It says in May 2023, Koberger was indicted by a grand jury for the murder of the 4 students. We all know that. He's waived his right to a speedy trial. We know that. I never heard that before. It says Koberger claimed he was shocked at the allegations against him. Since we have just talked about Danny Rowland, you know, um, Koberger didn't really have an abusive upbringing, as far as I can tell, what I've read, what I've seen. Other than this, it says Koberger may have been bullied, but some allege he was a bully himself. At least one individual who knew Koberger when they were young recalled Koberger as being quiet but friendly, and that he was bullied by peers over his weight. He was bullied a lot. It started because of his weight, and it was mainly by females. He was pretty big. He was very quiet, very to himself. He was very into his books. He was really sweet and really quiet. So, based on what I just told you about Danny Rowling, Danny was quite the opposite. He was very demonstrative, and when he didn't get his way, he lashed out. This says quiet and sweet. That means he didn't really. I mean, if we look at that, that would mean that he didn't engage with people. He was bullied a lot because of his weight. Others who knew Koberger didn't recall him being bullied at all. Casey Amps, who was 2 years ahead of Koberger in high school in Pleasant Valley, said she didn't remember Koberger ever being bullied and alleged that while Koberger was always nice to her, he actually bullied her brother at times. So, what does this really mean? He was bullied, he bullied others. Here's the good stuff right here. I know that he had anger issues and he would have outbursts and stuff. I never saw them face to face. My brother said that when Brian would get angry with him, he would kind of gaslight him and get physically aggressive. Brian never got physically aggressive with my brother, but he was the kind of person who would smash things or punch a wall or do something like that. How many of us have ever done that? I think a lot of us have had anger issues when we were younger. Does that mean that he's a serial killer? Does that mean he's a killer at all? Could be, could not be. It says that these individuals that in 2023 that he and Koberger's friendship ended after what began as a playful ribbing and jabbing escalated to a mean-spirited bullying, including Koberger allegedly putting Thomas in a headlock. Over time, it got so bad that I just shut down when I was around him. I eventually just told him, had to cut ties with him. Wow. So it painting a picture that Mr. Koberger was a hothead. It says one of his college classmates recalled him frequently taking contrarian viewpoints in classes and getting into heated arguments with other doctorate students. The classmate said Koberger seemed to have more disagreements with women, including one incident that led to a female doctoral student storming out of the classroom after accusing Koberger of mansplaining. So it sounds like he's all about control. They really don't talk about his education that I've heard, but it says here he earned a bachelor's degree in psychology at a local community college near Eastern Pennsylvania. He received a master's degree in criminal justice from DeSales University. I mean, they do talk about it. I'm just saying they don't break it down to exactly what he learned and what was the specifics. It says he was super curious, probably the most curious person who you'll ever meet. He was really into psychology, how people thought and whatnot. He's always been really into that kind of stuff. Of course he was. He put a questionnaire out basing his questions on how would you feel if you committed this crime? How would you feel if you were breaking into a house, this, that, and the other, the one that he posted on Reddit.
There it is. A convict to participate in what was said, study sanctified by the university, how emotions and psychological traits influence decision making when committing a crime. There's a lot of people that had something to say about Mr. Koberger. I didn't realize there was this many people. The next one said the Kobergers seemed rather interested in serial killers and developing theories on what happened at crime scene based on photos presented in class, but that his behavior didn't raise any red flag for her at the time. At the time, it seemed as if it was just a curious student, so the question felt odd. We didn't think much of it because it fit our curriculum. He was in there for that. Why would it be weird? Casey recalled Koberger being interested in criminal justice when he was still in high school, but she believes his addiction delayed his plan to go to college to study that subject. So there it is. His addiction was taking place. He was trying to find himself, obviously, so it took a little time to get himself together. He was interested in criminal justice. We know that because he wanted to be a police officer. Later on, after he got all the education, he wanted to dabble into forensics. He interviewed for a job with local police in April 2022 as a graduate research assistant, according to the email. He did have the interview. He sent an email, thank you, after his interview. Chief Jenkins, it was a great pleasure to meet you today and share my thoughts and excitement regarding the research assistantship for public safety. I look forward to hearing from you. Jenkins responded, great to meet and talk with you as well. I don't know if y'all remember this one, but this came out fairly early where a local bar issued a warning to Mr. Koberger about him badgering women, waitresses at the bar, and how he had to be asked to leave. It really doesn't put much of anything because it doesn't. This is hearsay. He says he spoke about the slain student during his extradition. Though Koberger largely remained silent after he was charged, he seemed really nervous. He was narrating to himself everything that was happening. At one point, he was saying something to himself like, I'm fine, this is okay. Like he was reassuring himself that this whole thing wasn't awful. While Koberger didn't speak directly to officers about the case, the police source said he did make an offhand comment about it. He did say, it's really sad what happened to them, but he didn't say anything more. The source said, he's smarter than that. He was read his Miranda rights during his arrest and cannot be questioned after the case without an attorney present. Supposedly, he followed all 3 female victims on Instagram and messaged one. He visited the Idaho Student Union before the murders. What does that have anything to do with the murders? I've gone to the student union where I used to attend college, and that really doesn't mean anything. He allegedly had photos of a victim on his phone. I never heard of this or remember this. It said he had more than one picture of her. It was clear he was paying attention to her. March 2023, an unsealed search warrant revealed items that were taken from Koberger's parents' home after he was arrested. And this is where it becomes, kind of okay, we got a lot of stuff here. 2 knives, a Glock handgun, and 3 empty magazines. Black face mask, black gloves, a black hat, green leafy substance in a plastic bag, a book with underlining on page 118, and the suspect's AT&T bill. So there's a lot of black stuff there. Black mask, black glove, black hat, and a Glock handgun with 3 empty magazines. You know, very early on, a lot of information has surfaced about Mr. Koberger. Um, did he do it alone? How did he do it so quickly? If you've never had a Whataburger, you need to have a Whataburger. Um, anyways, how did he do it so quickly? You know, I'm going to speculate here for a moment, okay? And this is just speculation based on that search warrant, that Glock. If indeed he was the guy, did he use a gun with no ammunition in it as a threat to hold people at bay while he did what he did? The 2 knives, were they hunting knives? Were they paring knives? Were they fishing knives? Steak knives? I mean, they didn't say. Black mask, black this, black that. The individual was seen clad all in black. But one thing that, after going over Mr. Rowling history and then going over Brian's stuff, Rowling confessed after he was arrested, and then he was, his DNA was found, as we read earlier, and all that stuff. So at one point, do you think that Brian's going to confess? You think he's going to be given a plea bargain? I know the death penalty is on the table, but that can always be taken off the table and changed into a life sentence if he gives the account of what happened that night. This case is so confusing that